All right. Hi, everyone. Let's do this. My name is Jake Kerr, and welcome to my Twitch channel. Um, this is my lack of sophisticated setup here for the moment. Hopefully, we'll get this improved in a bit as time goes on. We'll have a proper green screen. Welcome to my Twitch channel. And we'll have a proper green screen and a proper kind of method of providing a background that will kind of like look like the gamers, where my head is kind of cut out and you can see the writing behind me. So let's talk about this channel and what I'm planning on doing. So first of all, this is not just me typing at a computer. I am going to be writing a novel in front of you live, but it's going to be an experience where I'm going to discuss with you what I'm writing. I'm going to talk about ideas I have. It's going to be somewhat interactive. I'll talk to you online about what your thoughts are as I come to kind of forks in the road in the story. I may ask you for character names. I may ask you for city names. There's a whole range of things on how this can be interactive. At times, I'll do some fun contests. I'll give away a name of a character if you wanted to do that. I'll give away books and audiobooks and things like that. And I'll drink coffee. The process itself is going to be hopefully interesting for you. There's going to be a ton of spoilers. Absolutely will want you to think about that. If you haven't read Tommy Black 1, which is Tommy Black and the Staff of Light, or Tommy Black 2, which is Tommy Black and the Code of Invincibility, you won't necessarily be lost during this process, but it would be helpful for you to have read those, because there's going to be things that I talk about in terms of putting this story together that refer back to those. If you are looking forward to book 3 and you've read book 1 and 2, this is going to be full of spoilers. The great part of it is you're going to see how a book is written and how this book that you're interested in is coming together. You'll also see some twists and turns that might not make it into the final book that only you will have kind of access to and behind the scenes look at. But the downside is there's going to be a lot of spoilers. We're going to talk about how the book ends before the book ends. We're going to talk about what my intention is for each scene. And we'll talk about problems that I have that I'm going to be trying to solve, and that will immediately mean looking ahead at where I want to be to solve those problems. So if you're looking for someone to just read you a story like an audiobook, this isn't going to be it. If you're looking for someone who will explain for you the exciting process that is writing a book and have you go along for the ride while doing it, by all means, join me for this ride. The last thing I wanted to kind of note is putting together a book is just the first part in terms of the first draft. There's a ton of revision. There's a lot of things that change in the revision. So I absolutely do think that if you go through this live stream and you watch me write the book, when you actually read the book at the end, it will still be a delightful and exciting experience for you, at least I hope. So let's talk about Tommy Black and where I need to go. Readers of the series know that Tommy Black, the first book, Tommy Black and the Staff of Light, came out about 3 years ago. Tommy Black, 2.5 years ago. And Tommy Black 2, which is Tommy Black and the Code of Invincibility, came out about 1.5 years ago. And people have been waiting for book 3. And for a number of reasons, it's been delayed. And this is going to be kind of my treat to put it together. So let's talk about book 3. I'm a writer, and I'm sitting down and I need to kind of see what's going to happen next. Now, it would be a lie if I were to say that I'm doing everything by the seat of my pants. I don't know what's happening in book 3. I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know what's going to, where I need to go. The reality is that Tommy Black and the Staff of Light has a bigger story arc. Book 1 was about the staff. Book 2 is about the coat and gathering that artifact. And book 3 is about the cup and retaining that artifact. And behind it all is Tommy's background of wanting to join these artifacts together so he can free the magical creature that's been enslaved in them. So his heart is pure in the sense that he wants to do a good thing and bring in these artifacts together. And the challenges that are in front of him is that other people want these artifacts as well, because they're very powerful. They may not have as good a heart as Tommy does. As we've seen in book 1 and 2, his good heart has been a negative for him in the sense that people know what he's going to do and that what he's not going to do. But it's also been his strength because people rally to his side because they believe in what he's doing. Book 3 itself is going to be really a dive into the heart of Germany. This book is set in World War II. The Germans, specifically one of the leaders of Germany, has the cup, and it's a cup that lets you see. Rumor has it that you can see anywhere and at any time. For the purpose of this book, the actual cup from history, that was kind of the legend behind it. For our purposes, it's going to be limited to physical location. It's going to be kind of like a scrying orb that allows you to see anywhere you want to see. The challenge, though, is what we're going to find out, and what I'm going to be a big part of the first part of this book, is that you can only see what you know you're looking for. So I can't say, I want to see someone playing football in the United States. It's not specific enough. You have to have a specific thing that you want to see for this cup to work. Now, Tommy doesn't know that, and Naomi doesn't know that, and that's going to be a big part of what we talk about as we roll out the first part of this book. However, let's talk about the first steps. By the way, if you have questions, if you want to comment, if you want to talk about process, just go to the chat bar and put a question there, and I'll reply to it. In regards to book two ended with Tommy and Naomi and Iggy, their friendly Ifrit, having defeated a German kind of officer who had grabbed the Code of Invincibility, and Tommy used his knowledge of the non-magical but still important functions of his cane, the staff, to get the coat off of the German. So as book 2 ends, he and Naomi and Iggy are walking off into the sunset, happy because they have 2 of the artifacts, and in fact have 2 of the most powerful artifacts, if not the 2 most. One allows Tommy not to be injured at all. He literally can't be hurt because he's in the Code of Invincibility. And the other is he has this powerful cane that allows him to do all kinds of things, including stop time. Our assumptions coming in now are that he's unbeatable. And that's the challenge I need to work with in the first part of the book. However, before we get to that, and this is where I'm going to start the writing part of things, we have to realize that when we left book 2, the first thing you look at as a writer is, okay, what's going to happen next? What are the characters going to do? Well, if you're Tommy, who's 16 years old, and you've got this new artifact that protects you from everything, the first thing you're going to do is say, like, does it really? Maybe you'll hit yourself, or you'll ask Naomi to punch you, or you'll have someone do something like that. Fun things that confirm that this artifact works for him. And we would expect that it would get increasingly more dangerous as these tests get increasing, as he gets more confident in the actual magic of the artifact. That's what I think a normal 16-year-old boy would want to do. I got the coat, let's test it. So that's how I'm going to open this book. We're going to have Naomi and Tommy back in the hotel testing the power of the coat, and that's going to be the first part of this book. The other part of that is that Tommy's going to want to feel it, like get to know what it's like, but he's going to do that in the privacy of his own room. So looking logically at how book 2 ended, book 3 starts in a really logical fashion. I got this awesome coat, let's test it. And then as everyone goes to bed, Tommy has the coat on him. He can't be hurt. He wants to feel what's it all about. What's the magic behind this? Can he contact the dragon that he knows powers these artifacts now that he has them together? He wants to investigate deeper. And really, frankly, that's the first chapter of the book, and maybe even the first 2 chapters is self-discovery. After that, we need to throw a challenge in. What is going to stop or what's going to put a barrier in the place of Tommy and Naomi and Iggy that will get them off in a tough direction. But let's worry about that later. Right now, we're going to start writing Tommy Black Book 1. So, like I said, at the end of Book 2, Tommy and Naomi and Iggy were leaving the French chateau that was on fire behind them. Tommy's impervious to harm. Naomi had just defeated master-level magicians, the most powerful magicians in the world, and Iggy helped them out, so the three of them are heading back. I don't want to, as a writer, you want to kind of avoid the scenes that are just biding time and that really don't push a character forward or the plot forward. So what I'm going to do is open this with a break in time between book 2 and book 3. I want to open this actually in one of the rooms with Tommy and Naomi talking about what they've done. So let's say that Tommy's sitting on the bed in Iggy's hotel room. Iggy's standing in attention, and Naomi is lounging in a chair, and they're talking about the newfound coat and what they can do. People who have read the first 2 books know that Naomi's character is one of very, very aggressive forward momentum. She wants to just go right ahead and conquer everybody, and Tommy's is a little bit more conservative, so that will play into the interaction here as well. But how do we start? Well, let's start by describing the scene. This is, you can read the words as I type them. I'm going to stop every paragraph or so and talk about what I'm doing, but for the beginning, let's kind of set the scene. So I'm going to pause there. So he's wondering about his new thing, which, as I know before, is how we're going to kind of lead into that first scene. It's natural, hey, this is what someone would think. Note how I wrote the man bearing the coat of invincibility. Frankly, the reality is I can't remember the character's name who they defeated in the chateau. So that's one of the things I'll do is in revision I'll come back and I'll add some details about the man who bore the coat. Maybe I'll add some interior monologue where Tommy's thinking about what he did or where he fled to. Maybe I won't, but at this point, all I want to do is get the details down in terms of what's happening. The detail that you put in a first draft is going to vary. If you're really into the scene and you're typing and there's lots of dialogue going back and forth and it's clear in your head, it's really going to be pretty clean and going to require very little revision. If you're at a point like I am here where you're thinking about, hey, how am I going to open this scene? What are the thoughts I want to put in the head? Who are they thinking about? A lot of things are going to come in that are kind of vague, maybe not entirely clear, so you put them in and realize you're going to kind of adjust them in revision. All right, so here's a very, very funny thing. I've written earlier today I was writing a short story in third person, and the last novel I wrote was in third person as well. If you recall, when you're reading Tommy Black, it's written in first person. It's all from Tommy's point of view. And I just wrote the first paragraph in third person because I was just so used to being in that mindset. It's not too hard to switch from third to first person, to be honest with you, but it's a real pain in the butt if you're doing it for a whole novel. You're like, whoa, I'm 20,000 words in or 50,000 words in, I need to fix it. Luckily, I'm only 52 words in, and I can fix it pretty quickly, and I can start from the beginning. The nice thing about first person is also it immediately adds a really intense personal nature to the story. We're talking about Tommy now wearing this coat and bearing the staff, and we're talking about what he's thinking. Being able to say, I can't believe this, or I'm thinking of that, makes it very intimate and really draws you in immediately. It's one of the reasons I wrote the books in first person. All right, so here's a slip that is important and is in the very first paragraph, but is going to have relevance as I write out the first scene. Tommy knows that he's not a magician, and he knows he's not a magician like Jamshid, the original greatest magician in the world who created the artifacts. But he makes a mental slip here because he says he's the most powerful magician in the world. Now, I'm about to correct himself, but it's worth noting that why would he make that mistake now, and what does that mean? It's the little kind of thing like that that I'm going to draw on later as this story develops, because Tommy's mental state with the two artifacts is a key element of the first third of this book. Specifically, the second part, maybe the first half of the book, with the second part of the first half being the most important. And as I said, we will get to that. All right, so another thing for writers out there, note how it's in first person, but I'm still using interior dialogue. When you actually go into his thoughts and you put it in italics, like he's thinking these thoughts, that's like at the moment in time he's thinking those. It makes it very immediate. So he's kind of thinking along the lines, hey, I'm the most empowered, and then he stops and we put it into italics. Wait, not magician. So when you add the actual thoughts there, and not just his first person kind of narration, it puts you more in the scene. Something to kind of keep in mind. All right, he's lost in his thoughts. He's on his way to the hotel room. Really want to get him in the hotel room. So let's do a thing here where, he's about to walk into a crosswalk and get hit by a car or a horse, because we're talking about World War II. Doesn't matter. I'll kind of think of something on the, but it'll be interesting because it just popped into my mind. He's like, hey, his mind's wandering. He's walking into traffic. Maybe Iggy, who's obscenely strong, puts an arm out and blocks him very easily with his arm, and he says something like, "Careful, you almost hurt yourself." And then the natural thing for Tommy to do is to kind of laugh and say, "I can't be hurt." Now that just popped into my head, and you're thinking like, "Wow, you planned that out." No, I didn't. I planned him thinking, kind of being lost in thought, going down the street. Then I thought, okay, I need to add a little twist here before I take the hotel room. Let's pretend he walks into traffic. We all do that when we're looking at our phones. And what would that mean? And, well, for most of us, it's like, well, you saved my life. I was daydreaming. But for Tommy, it's a reminder that he can't be hurt. And all of these things kind of come together as a writer. As you're writing them out, you have the background ideas, you start relaying it out, and these things start coming together. We don't want to do that. We don't want Iggy to look with concern in his eyes. He's very matter of fact. He's a freak. He's going to say specifics. So I look over at Iggy, and what does Iggy look like? He just saved Tommy's life. Does he just say something, or does he remain quiet? He has to say something because we want Tommy to reply that he can't get hurt. So his type of thing would be to provide guidance. So let's say he says you should be more careful. All right. I don't like the wording there. You should be more careful, Tommy. We have not earned the right to be careless. Right isn't the right word. luxury is the right word. That's what I'm looking for. They've not earned the luxury to be careless. I may come back and revise that because I'm not sure that's exactly what Iggy would say, but the sentiment is right. All right. So again, I may change the wording there on revision, but the point is that we're starting to get a sense that Tommy is becoming confident, perhaps overconfident. You forget Iggy, I can't be harmed. And he saunters forward with a swing of his cane. Again, a bit of a cliche. We'll clean that up in revision, but you get the sense of what's happening. So let's see here. Let's go back to. All right. So, all right, we're going to move fast forward now. We got Tommy's thinking about the coat. He's wandered. They've wandered back. They had an interaction. Let's move them fast forward to the hotel room. I'll also work on getting some music in the background next time. He stood straight and attention, straight and attentive. All right, so my original idea here was to have Naomi and Iggy and Tommy all in a hotel room discussing the coat. Iggy's not going to care. I mean, he's just there to protect them and to kind of have some kind of vague goal that we don't know about because he's an Efreet and he's one of the magical creatures, which again is going to play an important part later in this book that I'll get to. So what I really like the idea of is, remember, my original idea is get them in a hotel room and they start playing around with the coat, like how badly can I get hurt? We'll kind of get us a sense for their mindset for the beginning of this adventure, but it will also kind of get us a sense for the power that Tommy has, because as they up the odds, it's going to be very interesting to see that he truly does have this amazing power. So first we're going to have that discussion, though, and I like the idea of it being Tommy and Naomi. There's a romantic, there's been a vague, somewhat less than vague at points, but there's been a vague kind of couple type of thing between them, a romance between them that's been very much in the background for book 1 and 2. It's not going to exactly be blown up into a true romance in this book either, maybe toward the end, but it's still there. So the moments where they're alone together and trust each other are really important. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Iggy out of the scene, make it Tommy and Naomi playing around with the coat, trying to hurt Tommy and laughing when she can't do it. And then at one point they're going to call Iggy in because Iggy is a powerful Efreet, and they know that if he can't hurt Tommy, no one will. So let's back up. Let me take Iggy out of the room and kind of rewrite this. Now let's have. Now our knowledge of Naomi is that all she cares about is magic. You know, she'd sleep on a wooden board if it gave her more time to study magic. So I was talking about how they decided to gather in Iggy's room because it was less cluttered. Now we have the choice of Naomi or Tommy's room. Let's make it Naomi's room because my sense is that her room would be like very sparse, very Spartan. All she cares about is maybe books and a bed and nothing else. She's got her hands and her magic, and that's all she needs. All right, so who's gonna start the conversation? Naomi would badly want to test it, but I think that Tommy, I think Naomi is a good enough friend that she wouldn't recommend that. She would wait for Tommy to bring it up. All right, I need to set the time. I don't want them just in a room doing nothing. That's kind of uninspiring. So let's have them that they just walked in the room. So I'm going to set the scene a little bit better. After closing the door, all right, so what I did was just took Tommy's point of view, came into the room. What do? You sit down, you lounge, you toss yourself in bed, you lay back, made it kind of casual. Tommy tosses himself back on the bed, and because he's laying on the bed, Naomi can toss out a wisecrack his direction. That's amusing. Again, it's a first draft. You would expect me to clean some of this up in later drafts, although I kind of like how this is turning out. Thanks, John. All right, again, if you want to comment, feel free to go in the chat room. I look super intense. Apparently, that's what it is when you're writing. You're creating something from nothing. It requires an intensity. All right, someone who's not intense is Naomi and Tommy. Naomi has a big grin on her face. She just teased Tommy. Tommy's back in the bed, but he's not relaxing. So he's going to reply because his thoughts are elsewhere about the code. All right, little funny moment there. Tommy sits up. He wants to test whether the coat will hurt him. He hits himself with the staff, and it hurts him. And then it reminds him, and it'll remind the reader, hey, if you've got an artifact that has no impact on others with an artifact. Gives Naomi another opportunity to tease him as well. All right, so one of the amusing things is you'll see, you know, as I'm writing, I went back and I'm writing out, and this paragraph here suddenly got pushed down, and often what will happen is I'll have 4 paragraphs that are at the bottom here, and I'll have gone back to rewrite, and I'll go down, I'll say, ah, crap, look at this. Actually, I do have 4, I've got like 10 lines here that are now unnecessary. So boom, goodbye, because I went down a different direction. Part of writing is also deleting, unfortunately, and that's the nature of the game. All right, so let's see. All right, Tommy's just going to blow off her comment because he's intense. He's thinking about the code. Let's add some internal monologue here because I ignored. All right, another thing to note is I pulled myself up and I started with an I here. I don't, I guess I pulled. I don't want to do another I here. So let's, normally you would do this in revision as well, but I've caught it here. So let's do something like ignoring her comment. I blurted out again. I may change that word later. All right, something. All right, so this is another thing in terms of pacing and things like that. So Naomi is obviously a wisecrack, is kind of a wiseacre, an old Midwest phrase there for you. She likes to tease, and I've had her be a smartass for the first two interactions here. I was about to do another one, but that's a little too much. You know, part of writing is kind of pacing and knowing, you know, raising and lowering the tension and not going to that well too often. So she's been teasing and teasing, and here she's gonna let's have her. Let's think of a different kind of attitude for her to have. Let's say she's concerned isn't right because she knows that Tommy isn't going to get hurt in there. Maybe cautious because she understands the power of the artifacts. So. Get the spell effect right? All right, so she's not going to think there's a dampening effect on her magic. That's just absurd. She's going to, and she would be very cautious about breaking her hand because that's the source of her, it's one of the sources of her magic. So let's leave it at that. All right, something that she can swing that's nearby. Not a lamp, not a chair, something small. A book. And of course, it's a magic book that Naomi was studying the night before. But we don't know that, and Tommy doesn't know that, so we'll just call it an old book. Again, slipping into third person. Oh, this is going to be funny. Now we can strode over. All right, here's a, okay, so we're gonna put it under, we're gonna do 3 X's here, which for me means I gotta come back and put something there. One of the things that I do in Tommy Black is have historically accurate, or at least if not accurate, a kind of reference that would lead the reader to go back and research more. In this instance, you know, Tommy picks up a book. For him, it's just a book. Hit me with the book. Naomi looks at it, and she knows it's a magic book, and she's going to use that as a reason not to hit him, or she's going to use it to, hey, I don't want to damage the book. So I could just say that, but one of the things I want to do is make sure that there's these historical references in the book. So this book is 400 years old, Tommy. It's the diary of. Now what I'm going to do in revision is I'll go back in Wikipedia or Google or Bing and go back and find out someone who was considered a magician 400 years ago. It really doesn't matter where on Earth because she gathered magic books from all over. So it could be a magician from Europe, from Asia, from England, or from you know, the Middle East. It doesn't really matter. Egypt. All we need to know is find a magician that's from roughly 400 years ago, in that range. And we'll just insert his or her name here, and suddenly we've got a reference that if someone wants to come back later and they're reading the book and they see the name and they're like, I wonder if that's real, and they look and they find out, yes, that's actually a real magician from back in the day, and that's the diary that Naomi has. And that's part of how we do these things. It's the diary of someone, player to be named later. The book is priceless. Of course, it's priceless not because it's priceless. It's priceless because she hasn't finished it yet. I'm only halfway through. The book is priceless, which is very typically Naomi. If she had read the whole book, probably wouldn't be as priceless as it was. So, all right, Tommy respects Naomi, so he looks around for something else. We're not going to use the book. Hey, it's the 40s. There's going to be a large ashtray, so he grabs the ashtray. Plus, we used an ashtray in the previous book, so we know that they exist in this hotel. Sorry for the tapping. You can thank Apple for their new clicky MacBook Pro keyboards. A bit more humor. All right, this is going to be an important point here, so we'll get there in a second. Back up about 5 feet. Turned. She didn't turn, she backed up. You don't turn when you back up. Lifted, move that ashtray. Hurled it with all her strength. Didn't even have time to flinch. There's the ashtray. Here's the key thing. I haven't actually figured this out, so let's kind of work on this together, or think about it together. The ashtray, does it hit with does it shatter like it's hitting a wall, or does it kind of thud, kind of hit like it's a cushion and just kind of fall down? To be honest with you, I'm kind of leaning toward the absorbed energy front and going with that. So let's check that out and kind of go from there. The nice thing about revision is we can always come back and work on that later. So hit. Down. Or did it stop in a, or did it stop like that? Or did it come to a sudden stop? Another funny moment here. So we're starting to understand the how the coat works. As Tommy stands up, Naomi once again all forward momentum. So as you can see, I've just been typing for the last few paragraphs, just typing away. When you get into a scene and you kind of grasp the give and take and what's happening and the interactions, it comes the words flow a little bit faster. Early on I was like, hey, should I do this or should I do that? Here I know exactly what's happening. Naomi threw the ashtray at him. It slowed down and fell. She gets a rough understanding of what's happening. She's just, she has no real common sense, and she's going to come in and test it again. This time she's going to punch because she wants to feel what it does. Tommy, meanwhile, is kind of oblivious. He's like, oh, well, that was neat. It kind of fell down, and when he goes down to pick up the ashtray, he's still thinking of that as Naomi is one step ahead and into the next test. So all of that is very natural, and it occurs in my mind very naturally, so I'm kind of following it through. So Tommy understands that that's what she's doing. Let me see. All right. Tommy's going to ask what's up, and Naomi's just going to feel her hand to make sure that she didn't get hurt, even though she knows she wasn't. All right. It's italicized disappeared. It just disappeared. So Naomi feels like she's figuring this out. Now she's excited. She wants to test it even more. He's finally caught up. They threw an ashtray at him. Didn't hurt him. It kind of absorbed. Naomi threw a punch at him. That was absorbed. We know it doesn't hurt the person sending out the damage. So they're going to try more. Naomi, being Naomi, is now going to try detonation. And I should probably note, an amazing book series is the Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. It's about a djinn and the boy who enslaves him and their relationship, and the boy magician. And one of the powers of the djinn is throwing detonations, which is basically a force, a ball that explodes. And I use that in this book. I do it for a very specific reason because, one, I love the idea of, like, what do you call something that gets thrown and explodes? Well, in the World War II, it detonates. We'd call it a detonation. And the other is I really wanted to kind of raise a glass to Mr. Stroud because I love his book. So thank you, Jonathan. All right, let's go on. So Naomi is she's ready to go on the next round. Tommy's kind of like in awe. Wow, nothing's hurting me. So Naomi's going to want to. She's now got all of them. All of the energy in the room is on her. It was Tommy saying like, "Hey, let's try this out," and she was a little uncertain. But the roles have flipped, and Naomi is now. She wants to do like whatever she can to hurt Tommy, knowing that she can. And the next thing she's going to say is, a detonation, but she also cares about Tommy and she wants to make sure he's okay with it. So before she actually launches one at him, she's going to ask the question. She's going to be. She's not going to say "may I." She's going to say "should I," because it's very Naomi. Should I cast a detonation? All right, so I added a little bit of interior monologue. Tommy understands Naomi, and he really, they do love each other as friends, and with romance on the horizon, and he understands her. So when she says, "Should I cast a detonation at you?" he understands the look on her face is more of, "I really want to," rather than "can I." Tommy at this point has he's still on a high from having defeated all of the opposition at the house that was on fire in France or in Paris, and he's like, "Hey, let's do it. No one can hurt me at this point, so let's do it." Now it's Tommy's turn to be a little bit snarky to Naomi. "I am a little bit worried about you blowing up the floor or the bed," which is very typical of what she would do. And Naomi, who is obviously an expert now on the code, replies, "Don't worry about it." Actually, she replies, "That's not how it works," because, like I said, she's now an expert after punching Tommy and throwing an ashtray at him. All right, so Naomi's getting ready to toss a detonation at him. Tommy is like, "Hey, no big deal," but he's also 16 and this is new. He's going to be a little bit nervous, not a lot nervous because he's very confident of this newfound magic. He's going to be a little nervous, so he is going to admit to the reader that he's a little nervous, just so we know. And that's going to feed into what happens next, because when he doesn't get hurt, they weigh up the stakes, and it's going to be interesting. It'll be fun. So, but at this point, we want to make him kind of still on the edge of, "Hey, let's unleash everything on me." So. All right, these are the reasons he's nervous. Two artifacts. Different hands. hands. Wow. So here we're going to do a little bit of foreshadowing as well. Again, spoilers for everybody. This is a stream about writing a book, and when you're writing a book, you got to plan ahead. So at this point, Tommy's going to, kind of think about it. And it just feels right to him that the power of the coat and the power of the staff are at full strength in his hands. In the past, we've seen it be kind of unstable. We've seen it, kind of not work when they're in conflict. But they're both in Tommy's hands, and for some reason, and again, that undercurrent of feelings that are kind of bleeding into his personality from these artifacts are a really important part of the middle of this book are going to bleed in. So let's drop some foreshadowing here, where he talks about how it feels right. Entirely his. Again, slipping into third person. Gotta watch that. This is what happens when you're writing short stories and novels in the same day, and one's third person, one's first. The voice of the artifacts. All right, again, I'm going to try to avoid, it's first person, and there's a lot of I did, I ran, so you really want to avoid that as much as you can, because I is going to be used a lot. So instead of saying I shrugged, I'm starting with a shrug. I did something. So it's all about rhythm of the paragraphs and sentences and how they all kind of interact. It's part of the writing process. Again, a lot of this other people will do in revision. I do it myself in revision. But as you're writing and thinking about it, it makes it easier. That process is easier when you kind of put it into your first draft. I'm going to finish up with this here because we're at an hour, and I don't want to go too long. So let's have Naomi unleash the violence, and we'll end there with some comments. Again, Naomi does care for Tommy, so she's going to make doubly sure. Let's not do the Naomi looked concerned. When, another part of writing is that, actions reveal emotions. You don't always have to say, I felt sad as the tears fell. You can just say the tears fell. In this instance, I was saying, Naomi looked concerned and replied, are you sure? I think it's more powerful just to say, are you sure? In fact, I'm not even going to say Naomi replied. All I'm going to do is leave the text there, are you sure? Because that question speaks volumes. It says, I care for you. I know I'm confident, but I want to make sure that you're okay with it. And you don't have to add anything other than that to kind of get that emotion across. This is where Tommy is like, okay, I've done my introspection, and I'll share it with you. He hasn't spoken to the artifacts or the dragon that powers the artifacts, but they spoke to him, and he knows in some kind of indistinct way. Can't keep thinking back to John Murphy, the author who spoke early on the channel about how I look so intense. It's very joyful writing, and if there's an intensity, it's the stuff that's going on in my head being kind of concealed by my face. So what does Tommy say? He says yes, of course, but he has to explain why in a very short manner. I sense I know it will work. So let's think about foreshadowing again. Do we say that? Does he say that the artifacts told him it works? Again, that's going to have import later. I'm going to say yes. We want to kind of have that kind of hint laid here, that the artifacts are talking to him, even if he doesn't realize it. So let's do something like that. It'll be a passing comment that he makes in the heat of this thing that the readers may not even pick up. But if they reread the book after seeing what happens later, they'll start to see, oh, he was laying these hints in here. I did that in book 1. We don't learn until the end of book 1 that the trains are powered by imprisoned merits, and that the horns, the whistles of the train are them screaming in pain. And in the beginning of book 1, Tommy hears a train whistle and he says it sounded like a howl of pain. Has no context at the beginning of that book, but I put it in there so that if someone reread the book, they would see that it had bearing later. It's exactly what I'm going to do here. I know it will work. The artifacts told me. All right, that comment makes no sense to him. It makes no sense to Naomi. He just said it, and for a reader, they may or may not notice it because it's going to be in the flow of this scene of like, hey, punch, ashtray, detonation. It's going to be passed by. So maybe they'll catch it, maybe they won't. But what would thrill me to death is if they catch it and say, well, that's not exactly what happened. Why would he say that? That's kind of weird. And it lodges in their head that there's something weird there. So Naomi misses it. All she heard was yes, because that's how Naomi's mind is. So we get a glimpse into Naomi's excitement. A few inches. All right, here we get to see some. Now, we see Naomi as a really powerful magician, but the fact is she's probably the most knowledgeable magician in the history of the world. There's a reason that book is on the nightstand next to her. So let's let her show off a little bit. All right, did you see that? She'll ask, because she saw something that only she could see, and we'll go into that. All right, now we're going to get a glimpse into Naomi. Her knowledge of magic and seeing what happened with the coat is going to give her insight into the coat that is actually real and important. And that's going to lead into the next scene where they just toss everything they can at it, which is going to be fun. How can I describe this? Didn't disappear. Was re-channeled into the earth. It's like a shield. The coat, of course, capital C. Let's have Tommy talk about how he was, what she's doing. Again, I may cut this in revision, but let's include it for now. All right. No, it's not a dam. It can't be a dam. All right, you know what? I'm going to stop right here. Let's, the coat is something. The image I'm going for is the coat takes the Earth's energy and kind of dissipates it back to the Earth, kind of returns it to its source. So Naomi's about to explain this to Tommy, and she's excited about that because it means that any magic that you can throw at it is, all it's going to be doing is returning it back to the Earth when she gathered it. So it's almost like she gathers it, sends it to Tommy, and it returns to the Earth. And for her, that's exciting because that's something that she'd never seen before. It's extremely powerful. She's interested in it, and she wants to test it. So she'll be in the next scene tossing, like I said, all kinds of magic at it. All right, so there we have it. That is the first part of the writing that I'm doing for Tommy Black here on my live stream. I'll most likely be on here again tomorrow night. Check the Twitch channel for the schedule, and I'll leave it there. Also, don't be afraid to speak in the chat room and ask me questions, and I hope you enjoyed it. So let's take a look right here. We have 1,005 words done in about 1 hour and 11 minutes with me talking a lot, which is not necessarily me wasting time. It's me kind of conversing with you. So if you think about that, my goal generally before doing this was to get 2,000 words a day done on Tommy Black. That's 80,000 words in about 40 days, which is a little bit more than a month. And that means you can get, with revisions and all the other work, you can get the book out in about 3 months. It sounds crazy fast, but when you think about it, 2,000 words a day and all that extra time for revision, it's really not too bad. What I'm doing now is 1,000 words a day, and it may go up, it may go down, I may add a little bit more or make this go a little bit longer, but you get a sense for the pace. You can do it too. If you sit down and you start to write, and you have this kind of conversation only with yourself, and you just start typing away, asking questions, putting it together, answering questions, trial here, error there, and you move forward. Before you know it, an hour will be gone, and you're 1,000 words in, and you only have 79,000 more to go. You're more than 1% through. Thanks for listening. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for reading, and I will see you again soon. Thank you.